Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Emerging Thinkers podcast. I hope you had fun listening to my conversation with Mr. Gaurang Damani in episode 1 titled The Untold Stories of Ramayana. Um, let's jump into the second episode of this podcast, and that episode is going to be all about Sanskrit. And that is why we have with us Dr. Sriram Iyer, who has a doctorate and is a PhD in Sanskrit. He teaches in Mumbai University and has taught across many institutions all across India. So we are very excited to have him. And the reason why this episode is all about Sanskrit is because it's one of the oldest languages in the world. And it definitely has a different perspective which it can offer us, a different worldview which it can offer us. And if we start looking at the world through the Sanskrit perspective, it is a curious thing to ask if there would actually be any difference between the way we look at the world now versus if we start understanding the world through Sanskrit concepts. So, with that said, and without any further ado, let's jump right into the podcast. And I hope that you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Iyer.
Welcome, Dr. Iyer, and welcome to this podcast. We're very, very excited to have you. And let me just say this straight away that I personally am very fond of languages. So, even my introduction with Veer Savarkar was through his poems first and then his political life. So, I love languages. I love learning new languages, and I love going because languages are such a great way to for us to look at the history of the world through etymology and things like that. We understand where people come from and what people used to think. So this is really a special episode for me personally, and thank you so much for giving your time to us, and welcome.
Namaste to all. You're doing a great job. I have witnessed a few videos of yours, and it is a really commendable initiative, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. So Shriramji, since this episode is about Sanskrit and my first question to you would be, I think it would be the question a lot of people might ask, and that is that in a world where everything is about coding and money and weaponization of those codes for money, we live in a constant state of war where things like missiles and F-22 Raptors have become more important than language and anything else. What do you think is the value of Sanskrit, and what can it teach us, especially as Indians, about life and the general ethos of Bharat?
Speaking of the ethos of Bharat, uh, one word that can define what Bharata is, what is the Atma of Bharata, then that is Dharma. And when we say the word Dharma, it isn't. It is a pure non-translatable. If we are to discuss non-translatables, then I would list the word Dharma as the first one, because it is a concept very unique to Bharatavarsha. Of course, the other faiths that have originated here also consider Dharma as their integral aspect. So when we define Dharma, we have to actually define Dharma. There is no equivalent for Dharma, and one of the closest way we can attempt to define Dharma, the scope is too big, and as a definition to explain Dharma is difficult. Dasha Dakshinas, Pancha Dakshinas of Dharma and all are found in Dharma Shastra. For that matter, one of the well-known definition is Dhriti, Kshama, Damaha, Asteyam, Shaucham, Indriya Nigraha, Dhir, Vidya, Satyam Akrodho, Dashakam, Dharma Dakshinam. So even the authors of Dharma Shastras, they also did not give a very definite form of Dharma, but they have just given the outline of Dharma.
Okay.
Yes, they say Dharana Dharma Ityahu. That is what sustains the universe is Dharma. But to explain Dharma, they just give an outline: Dhriti, fortitude; Kshama, forbearance; Damaha, control of your mind and senses; Asteyam, avoidance of theft, that is, avoidance of coveting for others' belongings; Shaucham, purity, which is physical as well as mental; Indriya Nigraha, control of the senses; then Dhir, intellect; Vidya, learning; Satya, truthfulness; and akrodha, absence of anger or control of anger. These are the 10 things that can be considered as outline of dharma. But from the different scriptures that speak of dharma, we can define it in English as the moral, religious, professional, and social ethics that one ought to follow for material prosperity and spiritual welfare.
Okay.
So this encompasses the entire every aspect of human life. So from the outline of dharma that we saw, if a man is true to dharma, then all the problems that you mentioned, we can find a solution to them. And if there is any language that can define dharma in the best possible manner, then that is Sanskrit, undoubtedly.
Okay.
Every Bharatiya Bhasha has done that. But the route to know dharma, when we say dharma jignasa, then dharma jignasa, the solution to dharma jignasa is found in the Sanskrit language.
Okay. And dharma jignasa here, if I'm not, it means curiosity.
Jignasa is an inquiry or detailed investigation.
Okay.
So this is the first sutra of Purva Mimamsa. That is purely from the religious aspect of dharma, ritualistic aspect of dharma. But dharma jignasa is something which every man ought to have, regardless of his varna, etc. But any person, particularly one born in this sacred soil of Bharatavarsha, must have this dharma jignasa.
Okay.
And the solution is found in the through the various texts which are in Sanskrit language.
Okay.
And it is certainly impossible to understand Bharata without the knowledge of Sanskrit.
No. Okay.
There is no linguistic chauvinism here.
Yeah.
Where at times when we state the fact also it is mistaken, but in this regard there is no exaggeration or something.
No, I 100% agree with you. In fact, so you during the start of the answer, you mentioned the word non-translatable and said dharma would be the first word or example you would use. So, what can you dive deeper into what non-translatables actually mean for our audience?
See, firstly, we need to admit a fact that the religious and cultural ethos of every nation or every community is inherently present in every language that is spoken by them. So the concept of certain things are unique to India, unique to Bharata, and these can be explained and understood only amongst us.
Okay.
It is very, very difficult to find an equivalent in a language that belongs to a different culture. Similarly, English, it's a beautiful language. It's a great language, but it belongs to a different cultural ethos, and it is very, very difficult that you find equivalent for every word there. And I would say that we need to admit the fact that every word of Christian theology or of English cannot find its
home
perfect equivalent here. We have to settle for the closest equivalence.
Correct.
So here what happens is we have to just slightly turn behind and see a history also, a few pages of history. Firstly, so let us realize that to know Sanskrit, and as a student of Sanskrit, as a teacher of Sanskrit, and as a lover of Sanskrit, what I always appeal to people is learn dharma, learn the shastras or the different disciplines through Sanskrit.
Okay.
Because there is always inadequacy when you resort to English or even modern Bharatiya languages.
Okay.
Here also there are some challenges that we'll be seeing sometime.
Correct. So that's very interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what happens is what had happened is the earliest generation of translators, they were all English educated, and here within the country, within the homeland, there was no requirement of a foreign language at all. Here the communication was either done to regional languages or through Sanskrit directly in the Pathshalas and all. But when things were introduced to a Western audience, even the Indian scholars had unconsciously and unintentionally adopted certain terminologies which were found to be the closest equivalents to the Sanskrit words. Over a period of time, we have realized that they may contradict as far as the connotation that they have is concerned with the connotation that we have. In such instances, I would say that non-translatables are necessary, like the word dharma. When you see translations particularly by the Western scholars, there are 3 or 4 words they use instead of dharma. Some use it as duty, some use it as virtue, some call it righteousness. I wouldn't say duty is wrong, nor righteousness is wrong, but these are all inadequate. They only
Correct.
refer to one aspect of dharma. They are not incorrect, but they are insufficient.
Insufficient. Correct.
So for such instances, we have to try to emphasize on the use of the original word. And today, see, even as we are talking now, at a colloquial level, most Indians, we use Sanskritic words in our vocabulary. Take, for example, you would say, I had been to Siddhivinayak, I had a nice darshan. So darshan is certainly an Indic word, is a Sanskrit word only that we are using.
Yeah.
So the problem of non-translatables comes into the picture when it is academic or when it is a formal communication.
Correct. Correct.
So this is one thing that our the pioneers in translation, they had somehow unintentionally borrowed the terms as it is, and that led to. And generally, what happens is when an example is set by the predecessors, the others follow their footsteps. Even traditionally, we say Shishtah Shabdeshu Pramanam. So Shishtachara, that is whatever the learned do, the others take it as an example and follow. So over the years, more than 1.5 centuries now, many words have been in the footsteps of the earlier pioneers in translation.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it as intentional. It was purely. So this takes me to another instance. If you have seen the translations of Swami Prabhupada of ISKCON, so their audience were mainly the Western persons from US and others who followed the Western culture. So you will find the use of the word demigod very, very frequently in the literature produced by ISKCON.
So the word demigod is used for Dev.
For devatas like Indra and others.
Correct.
They use the word demigod as a synonym for Dev. Devata or Deva. So here, if you see, the use isn't that right, I would say. Because Devatva, demigod, if you go to the dictionary of English also, it would be some an entity who was above humans and below. But the use of demigod became necessary for Swami Prabhupada because he was addressing an audience who were accustomed to the concept of one God.
Correct.
So talking of multiple gods was something unpalatable to them.
Correct.
So just to distinguish Krishna, the Paramatma, from the other devatas, there was a distinction between the god and the demigod. But in such instances also, if we are to use the word God for the Paramatma, we can settle in for a better word like use Devas as it is or deity or something.
Yes.
Than demigod, because demigod, seeing our Puranic literature, the class of beings such as Gandharvas, Yakshas, Kinnaras, Kimpurushas, all these, they fall under the category of demigod because they're exactly that.
Yes.
Above us, below the gods.
Below the gods. Correct.
So this attempt was, the issue was addressed to by Swami Prabhupada.
Correct.
But then this was a problem that we faced over there.
Correct.
And talking, I would, on a lighter note, I would say this is a very, very serious business.
Yes.
Nowadays, there is a lot of hyper enthusiasm amongst people to use non-translatables. And you find social media is a very, very strong instrument here.
Hmm.
I remember some person having asked me, one of my students, I guess, that, sir, in one of your translations, I came across the word Lord for Krishna. So, do you use lady for Radha? Because in English, lady is the translation for Radha.
Oh,
I,
okay.
lady is a translation for the feminine counterpart of
Feminine.
Lord.
Okay, okay,
So,
yes.
I asked him, what is your suggestion for uh, for uh, for Radha? Title for Radha should be Devi. I said, just go and look into the dictionary. What does Devi mean? So if you go and see the Sanskrit standard Sanskrit dictionaries, goddess first, second is queen.
Okay.
So the same thing applies to the word Dev also. To the word Prabhu also. Prabhu does
Okay.
not necessarily exclusively mean the Lord.
Okay.
It also means your master, Natha. All synonyms, Natha, Prabhu,
Hmm.
these are
Hmm.
all used for a person who is your master. He may be your employer or someone to whom you are subservient to.
Okay.
So these things, so just as Lord is used for some noble man as well as to their God.
Correct.
Lord, similarly here also Deva, Prabhu, these words are used for Prabhu, Sriram also we say. And Prabhu was the boss also, your
Okay.
employer.
Okay.
So such impulsive ideas should be avoided, and it is a purely academic exercise.
Academic exercise. Yes.
Because the persons who say this, they are neither conversant with Sanskrit nor with English, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Correct.
It is only an emotional thing. It is an
Emotional thing.
emotional thing for them,
Yeah.
and they take it very, very seriously. But it has to be, and we shouldn't desire to create an artificial English. If you're aware, there is a
Yes.
language called Mani
Okay. No, sorry, I'm not.
which is a hybrid language of
Okay.
Sanskrit with either with Tamil or Malayalam, where
Okay.
all the words would be Sanskrit, except for the verbal forms, which would be in the regional language.
Okay. Can you explain a bit more?
So
To
Mani
this?
Pravala, see, literally, even the word is very interesting. Mani means ruby, Pravala means
Yes.
coral.
Okay.
So just as the two are there are two languages in it. So Mani
Hmm.
Pravala, like Prakrit, we have many varieties. Vaisehi Mani Pravala also. Sanskrit is there. Apart from that, you have uh, either Malayalam or Tamil. So
Okay.
there would be some verbal forms in between, which would be in the regional language. But all the major part of the sentence or the verse would be in Sanskrit.
Okay.
So we shouldn't end up doing the same thing with English in our hyper enthusiasm to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would rather recommend that all should learn Sanskrit and try to express Sanskrit ideas in Sanskrit itself, rather
Correct.
than creating an artificial English. But yes, as an academician, I definitely feel there is a necessity to include certain words in the English vocabulary which
Okay.
are specific to our Sanatana culture.
Okay.
So I had mentioned to you about the word dharma. There
Yes.
are a few more that I can explain.
Yes, please.
Now, take for example the word itihasa. Now, itihasa shouldn't be translated as history. In regional languages, Hindi, Marathi, and all, we say itihas
Itihas.
just to be useful.
Yes.
So, itihasa, that is the word history, can be defined. And when we talk of history, the timeline is the most important thing.
Yes.
The dates are the most important.
Yes.
And when we see the definition of itihasa, what does it mean? Dharmartha kamamokshanam upadesha samanvitam purvavritta kathayuktam itihasam prachakshate. That is retelling of a past story to give some instruction on either of the purusharthas or all the purusharthas. So didactic stories, in that sense, we have to see
Okay.
the itihasa.
Okay.
So here the dates are of least importance.
Correct.
Whereas when we talk of history, in history the dates are the most important.
The most important.
And when we study history, Alexander the Great,
Okay. Yes.
whether great or no, that is how he is called. We have
Yes.
to go
Yes.
by this thing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he invaded India in this year,
Yes.
and all this. By
Yes.
knowing that, are we going to gain something
Yeah.
from the spiritual side of it?
Yes.
No dharma,
Exactly.
no artha, no kama, and no moksha.
No moksha.
So
Yes.
history and itihasa, they are
Yes.
two different things. So when we talk in terms of Ramayana and Mahabharata,
Hmm.
we have to uh, get accustomed to the use of word itihasa.
Itihas.
And again, historicity of Ramayana and Mahabharata, that is a different thing. They are
Yes.
certainly historical stories,
I
and that is happening. Let us keep it on a different track. But then just to seek validation on their historicity, let us not confuse them with history.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%, sir, because I always have felt that what is more important in our stories is not if it happened or not. Even if one says that Ramayana did not happen at all,
Yes.
that would be a plausible assumption, unless and
Correct.
until you're taking the moral values and lessons out of what the story is trying to tell you. So the fact that if did it happen or not, I feel is completely irrelevant to
This
what
is
we can
exactly
learn
what
from
Swami
it.
Vivekananda says.
Okay.
Whether some character like Sita ever existed or no
Yes.
is secondary. But
Secondary. I 100% agree.
there is no doubt that the character of Sita is worth
Yes.
emulating by every woman.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when we talk, as you rightly mentioned about the values, that reminds me of another important, well-known quote. It says the message of Ramayana is very, very simple. Yanti nyaya pravritasya tiryanchopi sahayatam apanthanam tu gacchantam sodaram apimunchati. That is, a person who is on the path of nyaya or dharma, even animals follow him.
Hmm.
And if a person is on the other path, his own brother would forsake him.
Hmm.
So this is what we see from Ramayana.
Yes.
For Rama, we had
Rama.
all the Vanaras, Jatayu, others following him. And in case of Ravana, his own brother
Brother.
Vibhishana abandoned him.
Correct.
So this is the message of Ramayana. This is what is intended by the creators of Ramayana and Mahabharata, both Maharishi Valmiki and Vyasa. This is what they wanted. Vyasa openly says in the end of Mahabharata that I cry with my arms raised that no one is following dharma.
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, coming back to our point,
Yeah.
Itihasa is to be distinguished from history.
History.
Again, when we talk of non-translatables, again, here we believe in our Sanskritic tradition, we determine the meanings of the words not in literary terms.
Yes.
But there are certain things, certain factors on the basis of which we are expected to determine.
I mean, so it is contextual.
Contextual.
Right.
So apart from context, there are 3 or 4 other elements which are mentioned. Arthat, Prakaranat, Lingat, Auchityat, Deshakalatah, Mantreshu Artha Vivekah Syat, Itareshu Cha Itasthitihi. That is Arthat. When you are determining some meaning, that meaning has to serve some purpose. Prakarana, the context. It should be relevant to the context. Linga, a corroborative reference. So take for example, Rama Anujena Saha Vanam Pravishati. Rama enters the forest along with his younger brother.
Yes.
But if this is followed by another sentence, Vanopakanthe Yamuna Pravahati. The river Yamuna flows near the forest. Then we must take it the sense of Balarama and Krishna. Because throughout the Valmiki Ramayana, we are not told much about the river Yamuna. Whereas when we talk of Balarama and Krishna, Rama is a name used by both, for 3 Ramas we have, Parashurama, Lord Sri Rama and Balarama. So all the 3 were known by the name Rama. So to determine which Rama it is, you have to see what precedes or what follows. So that is what is called as Linga.
Okay.
A reference, another reference which would enable you determine the meaning.
Yes.
And then Auchitya, there has to be some sense of propriety in the determination of the meaning. And then Desha and Kada, which are again, the grammarians very beautifully explain that Desha and Kada. They say, in case of Kada, Chitra Bhanu is a word which
Okay.
which is used for fire as well as to Surya.
Okay.
So Chitra Bhanur Vibhati, that is the Chitra Bhanu is shining. Now,
Okay.
what does Chitra Bhanu mean? How do you determine that? If it is day, it is the sun. If it is night, it cannot be the sun, so therefore it has to be the fire.
Correct.
So
Correct.
this is called Desha Atra Bhati Bhagavan. Here is present Bhagavan. Now Bhagavan again, that's the reason I said this is a very complex thing. The term Bhagavan, although exclusively should be used for the Supreme Lord, it is also used in our Sanskrit literature extensively for sages and other respectable persons. So Atrabhati Bhagavan, if someone is pointing towards an ashrama,
Hmm.
then it has to be taken to be a rishi.
Hmm.
Whereas if a person is present in some temple
Temple.
and the same statement is uttered, then the Bhagavan should be that. So Desha and Kal.
Correct.
So these factors are very, very important in determining the meaning.
Correct.
So now another equally difficult word to be translated is the word Natya. Natya in the sense, there are dictionaries, Sanskrit lexicons, which give Natya as a synonym for dance also. That is fine.
Correct. Correct. So it is not only
Natya
theater.
or dance.
It is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
only theater.
But if you see Natya in the sense of Natya Shastra,
Hmm.
then it includes the entire gamut of Indian performing arts.
Hmm.
So there is a very famous rasas, that is Natya Sangraha in the Natya Shastra. Rasa, Bhava, Abhinaya, Dharmi, Vritti, Pravrittaya, Siddhi, Swara, Tatha Atodyam, Ganam, Rangascha Sangraha. So the sentiments, the moods, the gesticulation part of it,
Hmm. Hmm.
then the modes of expression, the vritti, pravritti, the regional variations, then the theater, even the theater is a part of it.
Correct.
Then music, all these taken together constitute the word Natya. When we
Correct.
say Natya Shastra, it is not the science of dance.
Correct.
It is the
Or the science
entire,
of acting. It is
a comprehensive science
comprehensive.
including all
Yes.
art forms.
Correct.
Natya is another word. So there again, we have to take the 5 aspects into consideration. In what sense is the word Natya used?
Hmm.
If Natya is used in the sense of dance, then there is absolutely no harm in using the word dance. But if it is in the sense of Natya Veda or Natya Shastra, then you have to use it as it is.
Correct.
Then Dana is often used for, as a translation for Dana, the word charity is used.
Charity.
It seems to be a bit incorrect. Charity is purely of another religion. It pertains to another, it is a religious thing.
Okay. Yes.
And we have a different definition for that. It is not just given out of compassion.
Okay.
In other religions, it is so.
Okay.
Out of compassion, people give it away. Here, Arthanam Udite Patre, Shraddhaya Pratipadanam, Danam Ityabhi Nirdishtam, Vyakhyanam Tasya Vakshite. That is Arthanam Udite Patre, offering something to a deserving person with utmost Shraddha. Or now, Shraddha again, it is very difficult to translate.
Correct.
It is again a non-translatable. It is much more than faith.
Hmm.
It stands somewhere between faith and religiosity.
Correct.
So Shraddha, I would prefer using the word Shraddha as it is. So that is Dana. And then there are different aspects of Dana, that is, it has to, rules, that is, there are injunctions and prohibitions as far as Dana is concerned. So Dana ke liye charity is again not that perfect. And the most interesting one I would say is the word, use of the word planet for grahas.
Okay.
So when you say, in school, when we had all learned, the number of planets and the names of planets were different.
Yes.
And when our children learn, that is totally different.
Yes.
And maybe during our parents' time, it might have been slightly different.
Yes.
But as far as the grahas are concerned, Right from the Vedic times, later Vedic times till today, the Navagrahas are the same.
Yes.
So here there is only one possibility that we have to completely discard the Graha theory if we are following science, or we have to admit that we are averse to science.
Yes.
Sanatana Dharma has never been averse to
No,
science.
sir, actually, sorry to interrupt, but this is something I'm very passionate about in the sense of science that you mentioned now. And I find it very interesting. Just to give you one example, which I constantly have running in my mind, is the thing of age of the universe, right? And I believe that the Sanskrit perspective is needed exactly for these reasons, which people might think are not related to their everyday life, but the macro structures or the framework in within which we live ultimately determine how we live our daily lives. So the age of the universe is one of the examples where science is not sure what the age of the universe
Correct.
is. And when I was growing up, the age of the universe was 13.7 billion years old. And now they have sent a telescope out into space, which can go farther into space, go farther into time, collect more data, collect more light. And now they come back and say, oh no, we were wrong. The universe is actually much older than we previously thought. And their assumptions are not only based in curiosity, I feel, but they're also based somewhat in arrogance, where they try to justify their assumptions as a blanket statement for all that is true about the universe. You often hear things like it defies the laws of physics. Like, how can nature defy nature? It is only logical that we do not understand, or science does not understand it well
Exactly,
enough.
exactly.
So
See,
the
our
so the
ignorance does not mean
exactly.
impossibility.
Exactly. So this the Sanskrit, the Indic thought to the age of the universe is Anadi Anant. Uh,
Yes,
you know,
this is
it
what I wanted to say. That
it
that
yeah,
is one of the major problems.
major. I
Problems in
what
the sense,
Yes,
from the Western perspective, it's a
Western
problem. For us,
perspective.
it
Yes,
is. It isn't a problem at all.
yes.
See, where do you measure the number of days that you have lived in your life?
No,
No.
no. Sir,
We believe that.
just for our
Yeah,
audience, can you just quickly translate Anadi Anant for our audience?
yeah. So we, in our Sanatana tradition, let us see the Puranas because they are the closest to our way of life. The Puranas speak of a cyclic system, just as a Monday is followed by Tuesday, and this way there is a Sunday, and then there is again a Monday.
Correct.
Likewise, we have the yugas, and we have the manvantaras, we have the kalpas.
Okay.
So in this way, this one kalpa is actually a day of Brahma,
Okay.
and in one kalpa there are 14 manvantaras that take place.
Okay.
So that is how it is. The number, uh, precisely speaking, thousands of Chaturyugas. 1,000 Chaturyugas make up a Kalpa.
Okay.
So that is one day of Brahma.
Okay.
So today, at random, today is 6th of October.
Yes.
So if I ask you, what did you do on 4th of April 2017?
Hmm.
It isn't possible for you to recollect.
Recollect.
So we believe this is, and one lifetime of Brahma is called as Para.
It is called as what? Sorry.
Para, P-A-R-A, Para.
Para.
So day is the smallest unit. Then
Yes.
we have Paksha, a fortnight.
Okay.
Then we have Masa, month. We have Samvatsara, year. Then we have Yuga, the 4 yugas, Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, the 4 yugas. And again, these 4 yugas keep on repeating
Yes.
as in case of the days.
Yes.
And after 1,000 such Chatur-yuga cycle has been completed, then that makes a day of Brahma.
Hmm.
And it is said that after full day of Brahma is over, just as shopkeepers shut down their shops, all the articles that are displayed are all assembled and kept inside. The whole creation is withdrawn.
Okay.
And there is a Naimittika Pralaya, dissolution. And that is just as days and nights are equal. Kalpa, which is the active cycle of creation, is followed by that an equal duration of time, which would be the time for Brahma to relax.
Relax.
So, for such a civilization, it is very, very difficult to
Yes.
keep a track of
Yes.
when things began and when
Yes.
things ended. So
Yes.
we can only talk from a relative perspective.
Yes.
So in many of the religious rites, you might be taking the sankalpa. So when we say Adya Brahmana Dvitiya Parardhe. So of the current Brahma, this is the second Parardha. I said Para is lifetime of Brahma.
Correct.
Parardha means
Correct.
half, second half of Brahma's life.
Okay.
So the present
Ardha.
Brahma,
So para ardha.
yeah, Parardha, yes,
Okay.
Parasya Ardha.
Okay.
So the present Brahma has completed 50 years of his lifespan, and he is in the second half of his life. And this present Kalpa or present day of Brahma is called Shvetavaraha Kalpa.
Okay.
And the Manvantara is called Vaivasvata Manvantara.
Okay.
So that is how the Sankalpa is taken. So as per the present our calendar, 5,126 years of this is the 5,126th year of Kali Yuga. We are at present
Okay.
of Kali
Okay.
Yuga.
And is there a, just out of curiosity, is there a number as to how long this is going to last or anything
Yes,
like that?
the Puranas have mentioned the duration of Kali Yuga as 4,32,000 years.
Okay. It's a long way to go.
Yeah, long way to go.
Okay.
We are just not even just 10% of it is possibly done. Not even 10%.
Not even 10%.
Not even 10%.
Yeah.
So and the ratio is 4:3:2:1.
Okay.
So Dwapar Yuga is twice the duration of Kali Yuga. Treta Yuga is twice the duration of Kali Yuga. Treta Yuga is thrice, and Satya Yuga is 4 times the duration of Kali Yuga.
Hmm. Okay.
So that when we talk of the origin of the universe, this is a challenge that we face.
Correct.
So you will find, and again the Puranas also, they have a theory called as Kalpa Bheda. I feel that is necessary to talk here because generally people say that one Purana contradicts with another Purana.
Okay.
So you have the same story told differently in different Puranas. So about the birth of Lord Ganesha, we have many accounts.
Okay. So the most
Brahma
famous
Vaivarta,
account, the story which I have grown up hearing is the one where he is guarding.
Gauri
Yes.
Angamada Sambhuta. That
Correct.
is all.
Correct.
The Brahma Vaivarta calls him as an avatar of Vishnu,
Okay.
and Linga Purana calls him as a direct manifestation of Shiva himself. That is, of course, here there is no contradiction because we don't distinguish between Amsha and Putra. Atmatmaneva janitah putra ityuchyate budhaihi, says the Mahabharata. When one is born through one's wife, that is he is called Putra.
Okay.
So one's own son is regarded as his own form. The biological son is often considered as the form of the father. That is a tradition.
And this because sir, so I find it very interesting that how many parallels. The reason I'm so pulled towards the entire Sanatani ethos is because I see a lot of parallels between the modern Western science and what we have already written or said. It might be a totally different language. I mean, we might call it Pancha Mahabhut instead of saying that we are made of 5 elements of hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, sulfur, nitrogen. We would just say Pancha Mahabhut.
Correct.
But the language might be different, but the understanding is, I would not even say the same. I will say the understanding is deeper because there is a spiritual aspect to everything.
Correct.
And I believe that the spiritual state is a higher state than being scientific because being scientific is the base state for any being to exist.
I'm very, very happy that you said this. See, one should not be apologetic in admitting the fact that in Bharata, nothing can be secular because
Yeah.
humans are considered as spiritual entities.
Yeah. Yes.
See, in no other civilization, you have mantras right from the time you wake up from bed till the time you go to bed.
Hmm.
These are intended just to remind a man of a spiritual purpose, of a spiritual
Yes.
goal in his life.
Yes.
So there is no aspect of human life. Even we recognize karma, which is generally considered as one of the
Taboo.
basic pravrittis, instincts of
Okay. Okay. Yes.
creatures, we consider that karma also as a purushartha. We
Hmm.
admit everything, but everything has to be regulated.
Yeah.
So
Regulated.
that is the
Yes.
idea.
Yes. Correct.
So what you rightly said, there is a major difference between science and spirituality, I would say. Uh,
Yes.
when we talk of spirituality, again, the word adhyatma in
Hmm.
Sanskrit,
Sanskrit.
adhyatma about the atma,
About that.
pertaining to the atma. The atma is defined in the Upanishads as something, some entity beyond the scope of your indriyas, your senses, and the
Senses.
mind. And science is something which is based on experience.
Yes.
So there itself you find a very, very major difference, because what is beyond the sensory perception is not
Yes.
acceptable to science.
Yeah, and also the experience is not only
It is not constant. It is not
it's
constant.
yes, and it is only an observation. So so I look at it as to be scientific, you have to be an independent observer of something. So I
Correct.
you have to independent, like you will independent out from or outside observer. So if you have to study a forest, you have to be an outside observer to that forest. So the limitation with scientific approach is that you are never a part of the forest. You're never in spirit with the
Correct.
forest. And that is a major limitation, because unless and until you're part of the natural experience, you can't truly understand it. You have
Correct.
to think like the tree, feel like the tree, all of these things which are possible through a spiritual experience. Because
Right.
ultimately, like we say, everything is one, everything comes from him, the Paramatma. So his spirit is present in everything. Where, and because there is a separation between man and nature in the Western thought in general, this experience is just not possible for the scientists
Correct.
and the
Correct.
modern Western scholars. Something which we have been experiencing for thousands and thousands of years. So
Yes. Yes.
this, and I think coming back to the Anadi Anant part, the
Ah,
infinity of it, that it is
yeah.
infinite. Like you said, there are manvantaras and kalpas, and it is a cycle. The Brahma rests, and then there is another creation. So that aspect of it, the cyclical aspect of it, also escapes scientific understanding, because they look at time also as something which is linear, and time is not linear in nature. Time is cyclical in
Ah,
nature. and
exactly. Correct.
and that is why they do not understand that. And infinity, the understanding of infinity is something that modern physics is coming to just now. They are now
Correct.
understanding what
Correct.
it is, what it might be to be infinite, or that everything is forever.
Correct.
And that is something we have known for a long time, and I think the issue it solves, when you know that the universe is infinite, one of the major thing it solves is that then you focus your mind. Because like you said, every human ought to have this curiosity, dharma jignasa, like you said, which I think is a
Yeah.
very natural state when you are
Correct.
part of
Correct.
this world, because there is so much around you, you want to
Correct.
know.
Correct. Correct.
And the universe, what happens when you understand the universe is infinite, I feel, is that you try to understand what your place in infinity is. And I think that is what yoga and meditation is ultimately about. It is about being present in the moment.
Correct.
And that is only possible when you understand that it is anadi anant, it is forever. And
Right.
I think scientific thought does not understand that yet. So we have to be, like you said, very unapologetic about where we are stronger than the scientific
Right.
understanding, because I
Correct.
feel we need a different perspective to look at the
See, the
world.
only difference between, sorry, the
Sure.
only major difference between our Sanatana tradition and other this thing is that we need not necessarily be scientific, but we are not opposed to science.
Yes.
We don't persecute people for
Correct.
saying something which is contradictory to our beliefs. That is
Correct.
where, when people say Sanatana Dharma is scientific, I agree to such an extent that Sanatana Dharma is very, very tolerant, or I would say is so practical that,
Practical.
yes, if this is an opinion, that may coexist.
Coexist. Yes. Plural. This
That
plural.
coexistence is something possible only with our Sanatana heritage.
Correct. Correct. And we see it everywhere in different people believing in different gods, worshipping the same god in different ways.
Yes,
So it is truly a culture of it's a pluralistic culture. It is not confined to
Yes, yes, certainly, yes.
any one thing. Like you mentioned so many, what I found very interesting was the words which we use in daily our colloquial language. For example, let's say shraddha or darshan or atma. You've mentioned a definition for everything. So
Yes,
the scholars and our ancients have defined what it is, but I think would it be right to say that those definitions are only an outline of what these things are?
correct, correct,
Yeah,
correct. They cannot be perfect.
correct,
In the sense, these are all very, very deep, very,
correct,
very profound concepts. And
correct,
the
correct,
rishis have, based on their experience, they have defined these. And
correct,
we need to experience these in during our lifetime.
correct.
And what you mentioned about the Zanari Ananta, there is a very interesting philosophical point of it. The
Okay,
vices that you were talking about at the beginning, that
okay,
is, uh, all the negative things that
yeah,
we live amidst,
yeah.
like destruction
War,
and other
yeah,
undesirable things. All these would come to an end the moment that man realizes that his lifespan is not even a
yeah,
smallest fraction of what is a kalpa.
yes, yes,
So it is something similar to some like a mosquito's life is not more than
yes,
1.5 days.
yes, yes,
So how significant is a mosquito's life when we see it from our perspective?
yes.
The same thing is about us when we see it from
Correct,
the divine
correct,
perspective.
correct. And one of the things which happens here, i- and the idea which binds us all together, the world which we live in, is the Western world. It ideologically, we follow Western principles, Western morals, Western
Yes.
value systems. All of the we talk when we talk about philosophy, or when we talk about God or cosmology, anything, we talk about it from a Western understanding. One might have read a book uh,
Ah,
which has been
correct,
written
correct,
by a Western author, and
correct.
so on and so forth. So even this thing of us being very insignificant, like you said, is takes a very negative, or it becomes an inverse of how we celebrate it. Because I look at it as a beautiful thing, that I am so insignificant, but I still exist in this moment, and I get
Correct,
to experience the life I have, which is a very Indic approach to life.
correct,
Whereas in the Western sense, what happens is it becomes very negative, that, oh, I'm not, I'm
ah,
insignificant. Like, what's the point of any of this?
correct, correct.
It's always thinking
Pessimism
about
there.
the
There is
end.
a lot of pessimism over there.
Pessimism. It's always about the apocalypse or kayamat, or it's about the end of things. So we people then become very disillusioned with life, in the sense of, what's the point of living it if
Ah,
I'm gonna die? And then they want to live forever, which is not the point. The point is to live in what you have.
here, on the other hand, realizing that this life that we live is permanent, is temporary, very, very momentary, we strive to become immortals. That
Correct.
is where the difference comes.
Correct.
For us, moksha is a state of bliss and ananda and amrita. So that is what we strive for. And this kind of vairagya, that we are none, it is taken as a positive virtue here,
Yes. Yes.
because that is a spiritual discipline that is conducive for you to detach yourself from, say, just as krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat spriti vibhrama, as the Gita says. So when you have attachment, there is always an anger, there is always some disappointment or happiness upon attainment or non-attainment of the desire. So once that desire is cut off, then gradually all the vicious cycle of sorrows comes to an end, because it is a desire also. Again, it is not, we are not, sanatana dharma does not advocate sannyasa to all, does
Hmm.
not say everyone should become a sannyasi or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
In fact, you must know that sanatana dharma, in the dharma shastras, the grihastha is accorded the highest prestige.
Hmm.
Grihastha is considered as the Aadhar or the foundation of the entire society,
Hmm.
because the other three ashramas depend on him, on the
Hmm.
grihastha.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it is not, it shouldn't be taken in that sense, but yes, that moksha is the ultimate objective of all. Therefore, attachment only causes is a result for your rebirth. So there, this aspect also comes into the picture. The more you are attached to worldly objects, more and more number of times you are born. So this detachment is a direct means to cultivating the spiritual disciplines that are necessary for gradually rising upwards in the path of moksha.
Correct. Correct. Interesting. Shramji, amazing conversation. And so we've spoken a bit about non-translatables here, and
Yeah,
how it is, how so many words cannot find its translation or their home
yeah.
in a different cultural ethos, right? So one of the things which my next question or the next topic I want to go towards is um, of something on a lighter or maybe a bit not as profound maybe note, is that the use of music or the application of music in the Sanskrit language itself, because
Okay.
even the alphabets of Sanskrit, like the Marathi
Yes,
alphabets, for
yes.
example, the ka kha ga gha, everything is based rooted in rhythm, like thak, 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 ka
Right,
kha ga gha pa, and
yes.
everything has a order, everything has a logic to it. It is not
Right,
monotone like A B C D E. It is that alphabet is monotone. The Sanskrit alphabet is not monotone in nature. So
right.
music is an inherent part because the first thing you're
Yes.
vocalizing is rooted in
Correct.
rhythm itself.
Yes.
So how does rhythm help Sanskrit, and vice
See, yeah.
versa?
Rhythm in the sense, let us just see the. Now we have to just see something of it. From what rhythm you say, I understand it is about the uh, Sanskrit meters that are so musical in
Okay.
nature. So for a long period, the Vedic education and education in general in Bharata was oral. There
Yes.
was always the guru reciting, the students repeating. That is rote learning as we call it today.
Yeah, which was also, by the way, true in many cultures. Like I'm in
Many
Ireland
cultures,
right now,
yes.
so even the old Irish, before the coming of Christianity to Ireland, their culture was the same oral tradition, like it was in India.
So here, what used to happen is uh, the all the shastras also, apart from the Vedas, all the shastras were also taught in a
Mm.
manner that was through oral tradition. And to remember the nuances of the shastra, it was impossible to grasp everything and retain that in the memory. So the makers of these shastras, they adopted the system of sutras and karikas. So sutras in one line, it is like a coded way of remembering.
Okay.
It's a mnemonic part of it. Just
Okay.
few words, everything will be conveyed.
Okay.
And karika in a shloka, the most important aspects of that particular science will be conveyed through one single shloka.
Hmm.
So these karikas and sutras were memorized by the students. And whenever there was an occasion to apply them, they would repeat these and recollect the profound teachings of the Acharya.
Hmm.
That is how the system was. So these karikas, they are metrical in nature. And most popularly, they are the 32 syllable Anushtup Chanda, in which Ramayana and Mahabharata are written.
Okay.
So it is very easy to remember that rather than making
Okay.
points, some 10 or 12 points, and recollecting them. It is always easier to remember things when they are in the form of a shloka.
Yes.
So I
So,
just,
sir, what is a meter? How what does, when you say things are written in a meter or
so we have two ways in Sanskrit, Gadya and Padya. Gadya is
okay.
prose,
Okay.
Padya is in the form of a verse.
Okay.
And these verses are composed in different meters, some meters, and that is how there are so many meters. The definition is given by the number of syllables
Okay.
and the weight of every letter. So that is,
Okay.
we have Laghu and Guru, heavy
Okay.
and light syllables.
Yes.
So
Yes.
based on the order of heavy and light syllables and the number of aksharas, number of syllables in a meter, different meters are there.
Okay.
So
Any
like for
example of
example,
a meter?
yeah. So two examples I can give. One is our most popular Anushtup Chanda only.
Okay.
We were talking about Ramayana.
Yeah.
Sakradeva prapannaya tavahamasmiti cha yachate abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dasyam yetad vratam mama. So 32 letters में one profound idea is conveyed.
Okay.
And there is another Falashruti in the end of first sarga. Pathan Dvijova Grishabhatvamiyat Syat Kshatriyo Bhumipatattvamiyat Vanik Janah Panye Padattvamiyat Janascha Shudropi Mahatvamiyat. And then if you know this Rama Raksha, there are so many different meters used in that particular one stotra itself.
Okay.
So these are all different meters which are musical and some of these are very, very musical in nature. Since you were asking about that,
Yes.
there is a Srakvini is a very, very popular and musical meter. The meter in which this popular stotra of Shankaracharya, Achyutashtakam, is composed. Achyutam Keshavam Ramanarayanam Krishna Damodaram Vasudevam Haram Sridharam Madhavam Gopika Vallabham Janaki Nayakam Ramachandram Bhaje. So it is of 12 aksharas.
Okay.
So it follows the same pattern. Ra, 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 ra. Ra, these are all ganas.
Okay.
Ra gana means short, long, short.
Okay.
Achyutam. In this way.
Oh, so okay.
It is long, short, long.
Okay.
Ach. And generally, when there is a conjunct consonant, the word is the syllable is taken to be as heavy or long.
Okay.
Is followed by cha. Achyutam. So ach is a long, heavy one.
Okay.
U. Achyutaka. U is a shorter one. Tam. Tam is followed by a anuswara.
Correct.
By a nasal sound So that becomes long. Achyutam. Keshavam again K long. Sh short. Vam long.
Okay.
Ra ma na.
But how would K be defined as long? Because there's a A at the end.
Yeah.
Like
It is
A.
followed by a conjunct consonant.
Okay.
Chyuta.
Okay.
So the cha, which is followed by ya, is attached to the first term.
Correct.
So whenever a short consonant, a short syllable is followed by a conjunct consonant, it is treated as a longer one.
Okay.
So that is a general rule that is followed.
Okay. And this is true across everything or just this meter?
Yes, no, this is true in all meters.
Okay.
Then there is another meter called Totaka. You might have heard one of the Shishyas of Adi Shankaracharya was Totakacharya.
Okay.
So his name was given to him because he had composed a very, very beautiful Vedantic treatise in this particular meter. The work is called Shrutisara Samudharana. And he also composed a hymn on Adi Shankaracharya, which is very, very musical in nature. Viditha Khil Shastra Sudha Jadadhe Mahito Panishat Kathitartha Nidhe Hridaye Kadaye Vimadam Sharanam Bhava Shankara Deshikame Sharanam. So in this way, this again follows a particular rhythm. So these meters, they are musical, they are sonorous in nature. So the listener would be interested in listening to them. And since they have a definite rhythm, when you try to recollect them, even if you forget something, you can immediately relate to it and replace it.
Yeah, it is as simple as we remember songs. We can't remember books, but we can remember hundreds of songs.
Correct.
So
this was the practice that we had in olden times.
Yes.
So even if you have some word that you are missing, you can recollect it and fit it in the missing portion of it.
Yes, correct.
Because the rhythm is definite.
Yes, rhythm is definite. Correct.
So one last thing I wanted to say about non-transitables only. You see, I mentioned that it is a very, very serious business and an academic exercise. I said this because it is a long-term work which scholars and dharmacharyas must work in coordination. And today we are in a position globally where our words would be taken with utmost respect.
Correct.
So just as we have words like guru, etc. in the Oxford Dictionary, yoga, guru, etc., which are already present, it is not difficult for us to introduce some necessary words, like the words for four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, moksha may be included. Similarly, the four ashramas, brahmacharya, because again, talking about brahmacharya, what do you understand by the term brahmacharya? It is translated in English as celibacy.
Celibacy, correct.
So now we have a deeper meaning here. Smaranam, kirtanam, kedi, prekshanam, guhya bhashanam, sankalpa, adhyavasayascha, sankalpa, kriya nirvritrevacha. So even the thought of Maithuna. So these 8 are called as Maithunas or copulation. And the reverse of it is considered as Brahmacharya. So avoidance of all these 8. Smaranam, thinking of something of that sort, of kama. Kirtanam, to talk. Kedi, even playfully uttering such things. To see something. So it is not just control of the Indriya per se, but completely avoiding all things that are contrary to the virtue of Brahmacharya.
Which is a much higher task, I would say.
Much higher task, yes.
Yeah. Correct.
So it is not just forbidding the particular act.
Yes.
But complete even control of that thought or
so it becomes a mental exercise again, which is what so much of REA is focused, so much of our things are focused on. It becomes a mental exercise of not even getting that thought after a point, in a sense.
Correct. So that is Brahmacharya.
Right.
And not just celibacy. So Brahmacharya also deserves to be recognized as an independent Sanskritic word. And for the ashramas, sannyasi is a very, very important word that needs to be included. But main challenge that I would like to mention here is there is no uniform Indic term for several words. Now people have objection to when we say priest for our purohitas and archakas.
Yeah.
Now every region has a different term. What do you call in Marathi?
Bhadji.
Tamil we call it Vadyar. Call the person as Vadyar. Elsewhere different. In Sanskrit, there is again a distinction. Ritvik or Purohita is the name for family priest. I mean, priest for the sake of convenience here.
Yeah.
Because they're talking about Desha and Kala, and I'm talking about priest performing yajna, then it must definitely be a Hindu priest and not a Christian priest. So Desha Kala ke anusar I'm right.
Yes.
So Ritvik or Purohita for family priest, Archaka for a temple priest. Again for temple, there are so many synonyms. We have to identify Devasthana, Devadaya, Mandira, and the pronunciation part of it. Across North India, there is Schwa deletion,
Sorry,
or there is the concept of Schwa deletion. The last vowel is cut. It is Sanskrit, it is Mandira, but we say Mandir. Devasthana, we say Devasthan. All the words practically, Dharma. So, sir, practically every word, there is a Schwa deletion in the north, whereas in the south, mostly you'll find all abstract nouns and all words, all objects, they are treated as neuter gender, and they have an at the end of it. Devadayam.
Mandiram. Would you say? Mandiram.
Yes, that way we say.
Okay.
So there is no uniformity here again.
Correct.
I would just recall that there was one very, very popular episode of Kaun Banega Crorepati where Mr. Amitabh Bachchan had corrected someone. It is dharam and not dharma.
There was also a video which had gone viral, I think, of him, where he is talking about these things.
Yes. But here the problem is, it is not dharma. It is in Sanskrit when you see it is not dharam. It is dharma.
Dharma.
Yeah. The shouldn't be extended. It is not dirgha, it is rasva. Dharmani, dharma. So that right Sanskritic pronunciation should be adopted by all across Bharata uniformly.
Correct.
Before we think of introducing all non-translatables, we also have to focus on bringing about some kind of uniformity in the pronunciation. Otherwise, Mandir, see this, a person of such a high eminence, what he says is right, absolutely right. When you talk in terms of Hindi, it is Dharam, and not Dharma. But then, seeing from the Sanskrit perspective, even Dharma is as incorrect as Dharma is. So such challenges we have. So that's the reason we need to engage in a very, very serious discussion on this. All scholars and dharmacharyas, they must come together, and wherever necessary, I would say. See, because we are making use of another language which belongs to a totally different culture. So certain terminology, use of certain terminology, it is inevitable there.
Correct.
Which may, as long as they don't contradict our ideas, it is fine. In my opinion, it is so.
Correct.
If it is totally against what we have, our connotation, then definitely we have to replace. Or if it's very, very inadequate, we have to.
Yes.
But for every smallest thing, we shouldn't. We see, we belong to a tradition which says, Ano bhadraha kratavo yantu vishvatah. We welcome good things from all over. So for very, very minor things, we shouldn't just raise red flags.
Yeah, we should not. We should. We should not be a rebel without a cause, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And first, you should know for what you're rebelling.
For what you're rebelling, correct. So
the biggest curse of social media is that we all become rebels, but we don't know for what we are fighting.
Correct. Sir, so the Sanskrit. The reason I asked you about music is because rhythm is a very inherent part of. Again, I would like to draw because actually this is a very interesting segue for. We talk about Sanskrit, like people might see someone who is as scholarly as yourself, and you have mentioned brahmacharyas and acharyas and grammarians. And what might happen and what happens usually is that it becomes a foreign entity because there is a certain disconnect between everyday life and the Sanskrit scholars and the Sanskrit academics. So Sanskrit has essentially become a foreign language for us Indians. It is an English. So
it is we have to admit the reality.
Yeah, it is sadly become a foreign language. Even so, what can be done to reconnect? Not in the academic sense of only learning, but also just understanding the concepts of Sanskrit in our everyday life.
Incidentally, today, in some time, 1 hour from now, I'll be starting a fresh batch for Sanskrit today, as I mentioned to you. So it's a good question you have asked. There are two ways of learning Sanskrit now at present. I'm talking from the perspective of the learners, those who come. There is one section of students who are pure jignasus, who come here to learn Sanskrit as a medium to rediscover themselves through our Puranas, through our Upanishads and all. Just to trace their roots, for them they need Sanskrit. That is a different, or for study of some Shastras. Now that people are enthusiastic towards Indian knowledge systems, there are many who would like to learn Sanskrit for their research in these fields. So this is one section. And there is another section, those who only want to know Sanskrit as a language. They have a kind of pride and to a certain extent guilt that they haven't been able to learn the language.
Correct.
So these are two different kinds of people that come to us, to Sanskrit teachers in general. For the first, for both the cases, I would say that language has to be learned. There has to be simplification of the teaching methodology and not simplification of the language. I am not in favor of hyper simplification of Sanskrit. See, the language is classical by its inherent nature. And I don't subscribe to, for creating interest and for making it simple, you need not create an artificial Sanskrit, which is merely translation of your day-to-day sentences.
Correct.
It is good. See, that keeps the language alive. And there are so many things. When grammar was written, there were so many inventions that had not seen the light of the day. So today there are many things for them. We have to introduce equivalents in Sanskrit, introduce new words, welcome. But hyper simplification of the conversations is something I'm not much in favor of. For those reading Sanskrit for knowledge of Shastras and Puranas, they have to learn Sanskrit in a very, very systematic way. There is need for simplification of the process. Of course, many institutions are doing that nowadays. You need not study Vyakarana Shastra for 10 years or 12 years now. There are good books and good teachers who can make you grasp the nuances of Vyakarana in a brief period of time. And the other section, people learn conversational Sanskrit. The batch that we are starting today is for conversational Sanskrit.
Okay.
So there also, my appeal to them is always that while you make use of Sanskrit for general day-to-day conversation, don't take the language to the level of your conversations, but uplift the conversations to the match with the level of your language.
Correct.
So the main issue is about the teaching methodology. Language simplification is not at all required, because then you are not talking in Sanskrit. See, we have two scholars generally talk of two kinds of Sanskrit. One is Vaidika Sanskrit and the other is classical Sanskrit.
Okay.
Now, why another type of Sanskrit, which is Kritrima Sanskrit? That is not required.
What is Kritrima Sanskrit?
Kritrima is artificial. That is, you are just creating a new Sanskrit. Now, Sanskrit scholars might disagree with me or even question me. Now, generally, the term currently in vogue for government in Sanskrit is Sarvakara.
Okay.
This is the homophonous word with the word Sarkar, which is used in Hindi and Marathi and other words. Hindi. Marathi, I know that Shasan is used.
But there is Sarkar is also used in Marathi.
Okay. Yes. Because I remember having seen Shasan in many places. So the word Shasana is Sanskrit, is of Sanskrit root. And that is what I always feel. So in my speeches, I prefer using the word Shasana. Because Sarvakara is an artificial word.
Okay.
You might find an etymological derivation for the word Sarvakara. But Sarvakara as such is modeled upon the word Sarkara, which is of not an Indian origin.
So then Sarvakar would be
Sarvam Karayati, that
work for
does everything. And we are not living in any totally state that which government looks after. Even by technically speaking, that is wrong.
Correct.
We are a mixed economy.
Yeah. We are not an economy of social welfare.
Social welfare.
Yeah.
So in such a state, Sarvakara is fine. So they give the etymology. So this is an instance of Yogika Rudha, that a word is already there and they create an artificial etymology. So such a language is what I feel is not required. There is nothing wrong in that. But when we have such a rich, inexhaustible treasure,
correct.
Why borrow from someone?
Correct.
Rather use our own own gems that we have in our possession.
Correct. I agree. So again, coming back to the value, is it okay if we continue talking, or do you have to leave?
Another 5 minutes or so is fine.
Another 5 minutes. Okay, no problem. So I'll just, if we have 5 minutes, I have noted down. Okay, so if we have 5 minutes, sir, I will just ask you quickly, from a everyday perspective of day-to-day life, where academics is not at all in the horizon of common people, where we have to work, go to our jobs, look after families, and so on and so forth. What will be the quickest, what will be a distinction that you will draw? Like if I use the word, like for example, if I'm looking at the world through good and bad, which is an English idea of good and bad, versus if I look at the world through dharma and adharma, for example, which is a Sanskrit idea, what will be the immediate difference that I will see in the world which is around me, and how is it valuable for me as an individual?
So to this, I remember reading some of the texts of acharyas. The main difference is that we don't have the concept of eternally being damned.
Correct.
Today, what is adharma? Who is in the path of adharma? There is a very famous Puranic quote: "Na bhuktam kshiyate karmah kalpa koti shatairapi avashyameva bhoktavyam kritam karma shubhashubham." So thousands of kalpas might pass, but whatever karmas you have performed, for that you have to experience the result of it. But once you experience, there is still an opportunity for you to reform yourself. So here, the most beautiful aspect of Sanatana Dharma is that the doors of moksha, the creative cycle, will all continue till the last among the Atma is liberated. So we don't have the concept of one is eternally wrong. So that is the reason that in the Puranas also we find many characters having their Purva Janmas and the Bhavishya Janma also.
Okay.
And we see that how characters are elevated. Now, what about the character of Ashwathama according to you? Is he a positive character or negative character, in your opinion?
I no opinion, honestly,
See,
because I am not that well informed on exactly.
Okay. See, the act of other acts, keeping those apart, the act of killing the sleeping sons of Draupadi
Yes.
is something unpardonable, is unacceptable to any person who knows even a dharma to even the smallest extent.
Okay.
But
Yes.
even that Ashwathama, after experiencing the karma phala of his act, is destined to become the Veda Vyasa in the next Manvantara, in the next Yuga. So that is what our Sanatana Dharma is. It is not that he committed a sin and he is damned forever. No. Here again there is a scope.
There is always a scope for betterment.
Betterment. There is always betterment. Once your karma, you have experienced the miseries which are the results of your past karmas, then you have a better way. Means you still have the doors for improvement there. The doors are open for improvement.
Yes.
So that is the major difference that I see. And just as you had mentioned about Mahabharata, I also need to accept my ignorance about the other systems of philosophies. I mean non-Indian systems, other religions and other philosophies.
Okay.
Because having spent so many years, some bit of Sanatana Dharma I have been able to understand.
Yes. Yes. So it is a very big undertaking.
Yes,
so
yes.
If a scholar and a doctor, doctorate holder is saying that he's been only able to experience some of it, for people like me and others like me, it's a long journey.
See, it's an ocean, and what I know is only a fistful of it.
Yes. Yes. So with that analogy, then I would have to say that we have to start looking at the right ocean in order to understand, the waters in which we can swim.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So through this podcast, I again appeal to all. There are many institutions in Mumbai and elsewhere where Sanskrit language is taught. So make use of that.
Any
Sanskrit.
names, sir? Any names?
Many. So many. Because I am myself associated with 3 or 4. I shouldn't miss out anyone's name.
Yeah.
Okay. So out of that fear, I'm not mentioning any single name.
Yeah.
So there are many. See, the Atma of Bharatavarsha is Sanskrit. And Atma occupies the highest position. Atma is eternal. Let us not forget, in our Sanatana system, the Atma is eternal. Everything else is temporary. Yes. So let us move towards what is infinite and eternal.
Yes.
Even living in your materialistic life, you can learn Sanskrit. You can, and that will be a connecting link between your material life and your spiritual life.
Yes.
And as in the beginning we discussed about the ethical part of it, Samskrita is the storehouse of all such ethical ideas. So through these, you can definitely contribute better to the society and make a better world. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Iyer, for joining this podcast.
I
It
was
was,
prepared only for an hour, but it was very nice interacting with you. Thank you.
thank you so much. It was amazing having this conversation, and thank you so much.